We're joined by Anya Kamenetz. She's a magazine writer and the author of the books Generation Debt and DIY-U. And Anya, you've been watching this for a decade or more. It wasn't like there was collective insanity before the soaring tuitions and the souring job market. It still looked like a good bet to go into debt for college, didn't it?
Everybody told you, bachelor's degree recipients earn $1 million more over a lifetime than people who just have a high school diploma. Education is a bet on yourself. It's good debt. It's a good investment. And that has been the conventional wisdom for a really long time.
So when did those numbers start to not look as solid any longer?
Well, averages are a funny thing because they don't necessarily apply to any particular individual. And what we're looking at is a confluence of factors, right? Tuition has grown more than any other good or service in the entire U.S. economy since 1978. And these loan burdens, they were $20,000 when Generation Debt came out. Now it's $25,000. That's very much an average. And you can see that some of them are going much, much higher than that. And in the atmosphere that we're in now, where college graduates are facing a really tough job market, that equation and the uncertainty it involves has started to make a lot more people doubt the conventional wisdom.
But companies, institutions that sell any good or service can never price it beyond what people are willing to pay. How come colleges have been able to raise their tuition well above the cost of living year after year after year with so little pushback?
It's very interesting. I think that there's a great parallel to be drawn with the healthcare system, or the healthcare crisis, as you might phrase it. Why do these costs in these areas of the economy always rise faster than inflation? There's a lot of different reasons. One is that they're labor intensive. They're highly skilled labor intensive. It's very difficult to create the kinds of efficiencies that you've seen in the manufacturing or other sectors of the economy. Another factor that's common to both healthcare and education is the great involvement of the government. There isn't really a marketplace for higher education like you see for other goods and services. The government is stepping in, they're aiding colleges, they're aiding students, and the market is sort of muddied. And overall, I would say there's such a great anxiety. I mean, this is an information economy and information in society. People want to get ahead. They see education as the way to get ahead for their children. They're willing to pay whatever it takes.
But faced with the prospect of graduating college with 25, 35, 45, and more thousands of dollars in debt, how come branding power is still so potent? How come some schools can command enormous tuition costs while others, often quite good institutions, pale in comparison, yet they may be a better bet?
Well, education is sort of a scarcity good. Like, there's two different ways of looking at it. One is the quality of the education, the experience in that you're getting, and that's a very personal, private benefit. But the scarcity effect of it is, this is a sorting mechanism. This is how we decide who gets the goodies in our society. If you look at the Supreme Court, if you look at CEOs of major corporations, you're going to see a lot of the same college names pop up. And there's only so many slots in those colleges. And so people are clamoring to get in there, paying whatever it takes. Now, if you can't get in at the very highest echelon, there's a limited number of spots at Harvard, but there's a private university down the road that offers cosmetically a lot of the same benefits at a very similar price point, even though it's not as difficult or competitive to get in. And that's really the area that's causing the most difficulty, the highest prices with less to show for it.
A lot of economists talk about leading and lagging indicators. If you're someone who's now in high school and you've seen an older brother or sister plow themselves under with debt, are you less likely to do that yourself?
It's interesting. We've seen the conventional wisdom change on a dime when it comes to home ownership, and people saying this is no longer a necessary marker of adulthood. This is something I have to think very, very carefully about before I take on a mortgage. And I think that same caution is now being seen with younger people in high school, where they're saying, I need to really think about the value of my degree. What is the particular course of study that I'm choosing? How does that fit in with the price that I'm paying? Is there a way to go to school at community college and then transfer? And all of these different options are becoming much more appealing.
Will it coalesce, though, into a pushback against colleges and universities that have had sort of a free hand when it comes to pricing?
You know, I've been asking this question for a long time, and I wrote my book DIYU because I was really interested in, is there any way to fundamentally alter the model in which we deliver higher education? I don't believe that the competition on the price point is going to come from these existing institutions. They're very comfortable, they're very entrenched. But on the fringes of the system, we're seeing the future of what a higher education might look like at a completely different price point in a completely different way.
I've always watched as social problems move from the fringe to the center, and that's when they get dealt with, when finally enough people in the society are saying, "Uncle." Well, now that college debt has surpassed credit card debt in this country, is that enough of a critical mass for people to say, we got to start doing something different?
You know, I really hope that we've reached a tipping point. I believe that the Occupy Wall Street movement has done a lot to bring student loans to the forefront. You know, when I started writing about this stuff in the Village Voice in 2004, nobody really took it seriously. People thought that this was whining, middle-class, entitled people complaining. And now people, you know, Obama's talking about it in the State of the Union address, and there's a widespread understanding that if we want to remain a competitive country in the 21st century, what are we doing denying people the ability to have an affordable higher education? We're just shooting ourselves in the foot. So I think that this is making its way to the forefront of the national agenda. And, you know, it doesn't mean a solution is just around the corner, but it's a very encouraging sign.
Anya Kamenetz, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.